What's up guys, Kyle here again, and it's time for another FAQ'n Friday. I know I'm always saying in these videos that I'm super excited because this or that, but that's because I've had a lot of great things going on lately. So I am super excited, number one, today, because I got a Soldano SLO 100 yesterday. Haven't even plugged it in yet, but I'm super psyched about it. The other reason I'm excited is because this came in this week. My quad Cortex is here. Over the weekend, I'm definitely going to put together a first impressions video of the quad Cortex. If that's something you guys are interested in, make sure to stay tuned for that. It's a pretty cool device so far, but we're not going to dive too deep into that because this is an FAQ video. So you guys can ask me FAQ questions next week about the quad Cortex if you want. But yeah, I'm super excited to have this thing. That is a tone that I threw together in about 20 seconds that kind of emulates my Bushido Code live rig, and it sounds pretty cool. The second thing before we jump into the questions, just a quick reminder. My Facebook Marketplace profile is now down in the description of each video that I have. If you guys are interested in any of the gear that I am selling, click on that link, follow me on Facebook Marketplace. That way you can see everything that I'm posting. This weekend, I'm actually gonna be posting a ton of new stuff. Amps, guitars, pedals. Gonna try to get through as much as I possibly can because I have a lot of stuff that I need to get moved because I just bought a Soldano SLO. So I gotta get some money back. But anyways, yeah, if you guys are interested in anything that I have for sale, feel free to hit me up. I would really appreciate it and would really love to get one of my amps in your guys' hands. So without further ado, first question. Les Sharp asks, hey Thrash Damon, any thoughts on DSL or JVM Marshalls? I know you enjoy the DSLs. What do you think of the JVMs? Many thanks, bro. Yeah, I actually own both. I have a DSL 50, I have a TSL 60, and then I have a JVM 410. I've also owned the 205 and the 210 heads. I can honestly say, without hesitation, I like the JCM 2000s much better than I like the JVMs. You're the third person today to ask me about that. What's up with the JVM? It's not my favorite amp. It's just there's so much compression, there's so much gain. I know that there's mods that you can do to kind of open the amp up a little bit and dial the gain back, but me as a high gain player, I feel like there's too much gain in that amp. There's just way too much gain. Even on the orange channel, even on OD1, it's just like it doesn't have a natural feel to it. It doesn't sound like a classic Marshall on the lower gain channels. If you guys have owned a JMP 2203 or a Super Lead, they sound nothing like what like the green or the orange channels on the OD1 on the JVM sound like. They don't even really get close, whereas at least the JCM 2000, the green channel kind of gets there. But yeah, the JVMs are just not my first choice for a hot rodded Marshall style tone, even though it is a Marshall style amp. They just don't do it for me. I don't think they're bad. I think they're good amps. I just think that they have shortcomings that really turn me off. Like I said, my 410H is probably, they're also very hit or miss. I've owned quite a few of each of the models of JVM and they all sound a little bit different. So the only reason I kept my current 410H is because it's the best sounding one that I've got my hands on so far. So it does sound good. I don't dislike it, but considering that the 410H sells for like 12 to 1300 bucks used, and a DSL 50 or 100 sells for $7, like I'm going for that DSL all day long because I think it sounds more like just a hot rodded Marshall tone and it's half the price. So it's kind of a no-brainer. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Again, I don't think the JVM's a bad amp. I think they're awesome. I think they actually do better at lower tunings than any of the older Marshalls do. But for me personally, there's just way too much compression, way too much gain in those gain channels. Steve W asks, hey Kyle, what are some of your favorite cabinets and speaker combinations that you've heard? What are your thoughts on how a 2x15 cab would compete with a 4x12 for clarity? Hey Steve, that's a good question. I can't say I've ever played through a 2x15 cab before. Naturally, a bigger speaker is gonna have a slower excursion. Now, it depends on the enclosure, it depends on the design of the speaker, it's a sum of all parts for sure. But naturally, a 15-inch cone is not gonna move as fast as a 12-inch cone. So I would think that for someone like me who likes a really quick, punchy, reactive low end, a 2x15 probably wouldn't work for me. Now, if you want just like a big, full, sludgy sounding low end, 2x15 might work a little bit better for you, but again, it's dependent on the enclosure, dependent on the speaker itself. So with that said, 4x12 cabs, my Friedman that is right there is one of the best cabs I've ever heard, and I don't know why. I know Friedman basically builds their cabs to the old Marshall spec, and then they throw Chinese V30s and Chinese greenbacks in it. You know what? It sounds ridiculously good. I don't know why, it just does. That is my favorite cab that I own. Before I had my Friedman, I tend to gravitate towards my Mode 4 400 cab, depending on what amp I use. Because I'm in standard, I don't get a lot of low-end frequencies, especially out of traditional size cabs. So I like the oversized cabs because it gives me a little bit of an extended bass response. To an extent, it's not crazy. So my oversized Mesa and my oversized Mode 4 cabs tend to be the ones that I gravitate towards the most. It really depends. It depends on the amp, it depends on the guitar, it depends on what I'm playing. But the Friedman just really is big and 3D and full. There's tons of frequencies going on. And even though it's got a nice, big, punchy low end, it doesn't sound boomy, it doesn't sound farty. The bass doesn't react slowly. It's just a perfectly balanced, deep, yet present, just awesome sounding cab. I don't know what they did for that thing, but it sounds incredible. I will never sell it. It's become my favorite cab. Nick Harper asks, have you ever got to try high wattage amps such as the Crate Blue Voodoo 300 or Randall Titan? If so, how do they sound and play for you? I've never gotten to play those ones, man. The highest wattage amp that I played is actually one that I own. It's a Diesel Herbert, or a Dietzel, a Dietzel Herbert. That's 180 watts. It's got 6 power tubes. It has an insane amount of clean headroom, and it just punches like crazy on that low end. It can be a big, saggy, and dark amp if you dial it that way, but there are some tricks to really tighten that amp up and make it punchy. I've used it for Bushido code a bunch, and you guys know how much of a stickler I am for having a tight and percussive low end, and I can get that out of the Diesel easily. So that amp, just the amount of clean headroom in it, it's unreal. Other than that, the Mesa Stiletto Trident, for whatever reason, was just painfully loud. It was a painfully loud amp. To get it to the sweet spot where the amp sounded really good. I know the triple rectifier kind of has the same power section that the Stiletto Trident. That the Stiletto. I need to go to bed so bad. That the Stiletto Trident has. But just the frequencies within the Stiletto Trident, it made it hit you in the chest in almost an unpleasant way. It's like if you've ever played an old Plexi and you cranked it and you've been in the same room as the amp, it makes you uncomfortable, like physically uncomfortable. That's how loud it is. You can feel it in your chest. The Stiletto does the same thing, but it's more of a clean power. It's not a broken up power section like a Plexi would be. And man, that thing was loud and clean and kind of painful. It's not that is definitely not the amp that you want to crank for the good tones. It will hurt you. All right, last question comes from my man Ronnie Webster, who is one of my Patreons. Thank you very much, Ronnie. Are you a fan of the Valvestate 8100 at all? I've always been a huge Fear Factory fan, and Dino Cazares? Ooh. Used it back in the late 90s, along with Chuck Schuldiner and Wayne Static. I personally have never played it. I know that that's like the death amp. I know that's the one that Chuck used for pretty much everything. And I know it has a cult following, as does some of the PV stuff, like the PV solid state amps. I got some PV solid states, by the way, if you guys didn't see that on my channel this week. XXL, Trans-Tube Supreme, so you guys will be seeing those soon. But yeah, I have never played the 8100, so I can't speak on it, but Derrick, my other guitarist, has one at his house. It's his. He said I can borrow it at any time, so we will absolutely be doing a video with the Valvestate 8100. I wish I could comment on it, but I honestly have never played one in person. I've always been really curious, though. I know a lot of people really like them, and they've held up well as far as respect in the tonal community over the years, especially for a solid state amp. There's really only a couple solid state amps that get any sort of respect at all, and that is one of them. The VH140C is another, and then the PVXXL or the Supreme series seems to get pretty high marks too. And then there's obviously the older Randalls that Dime used, but I'm honestly not super familiar with what models they were, but those ones are popular too. But anyways, guys, yeah, thank you so much for your questions. Please, for next week's episode, Leave your questions down in the description. I would be more than happy to answer them and have you guys come back and hang out with me for a little bit, because Thursday night's quickly becoming my favorite night of the week to do these videos. So appreciate you guys as always. Can't wait to see you for the next one. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time.